Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff Mom Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome back to Samantha. Back
Thank
in a
you.
while.
My voice, I just realized as I'm talking to you, my voice went down a little. I've got my sexy, sick voice going on. Here we go. Yeah.
Sexy, sick voice. Oh, geez. I almost said welcome back to Samantha in the intro. So this is going to be fun. But it is a momentous occasion because not only is Samantha back from COVID, we are joined by the splendiferous Bridget Todd. Always a pleasure to have you.
Yay.
Oh, I'm so happy to be back. I'm happy Samantha's back. This is your inaugural recording since being out from COVID. How are you feeling?
You know, like I said, I've got this voice, but I'm feeling much better. This is the first time I've ever had COVID. So that was an experience. Not cool. Wear your mask.
Yeah. Public service announcement.
Just, if you can, if you're in a crowd, do it. I would recommend it. 10 recommend.
Would
mask.
recommend 10 out of 10.
Yes.
But
yes.
How are y'all? I didn't get to ask you because I got to complain a lot.
Oh, that's the benefit of,
It's
if
true.
you got
I've
to
been
take the
waiting.
plus side of getting COVID, then the benefit is to complain.
I've been waiting to tell you all the ails. I almost died.
Complaining and watching lots of TV.
Yes.
Those are the
Yes.
best parts about being sick.
Eating
Yes.
soup. That was my big, when I got COVID, I remember I went to shock at first, and then I was like, but the soup though.
I couldn't eat soup. I couldn't eat anything hardly.
Oh no.
Oh, you couldn't even eat soup?
Yeah, that's legitimately this sucks.
Well, that was because I didn't have I sneezed a lot. That was my symptom for 2 days. That was
That's
it.
so weird. Well, how are y'all? I hope you're healthy.
Yes, I am good. I'm getting actually the updated COVID vaccine today and my flu
yes.
vaccine because Bridget, who unfortunately has technical difficulties and we can't see, we're going to Las Vegas this week.
That's
Oh my
right.
gosh.
For the iHeart Music Festival. Look out, Las Vegas.
Look out. Sounds so threatening.
I mean, in a good way. Not
okay.
Yeah, look out because we're going to do engaging podcasts in your city, Las Vegas. So look out for that. Not
That's right.
a threat.
Okay. Yeah, we're doing some podcasts there. It's going to be fun. Samantha is going on a birthday vacation time.
Yeah, I am missing out. The first time in the years that they asked us to do something, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to go the opposite way. But thanks for asking.
I'll be on the other coast.
I like that, but thanks for asking. But yes, I'm excited to see Bridget in person. And yeah, I'm trying to not get COVID there. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, because you have other plans coming up.
I do. I'm going to Orlando because I love a good haunted house and I love The Last of Us and there's a Last of Us haunted house. So
Ooh.
That's just-
It's like Last of Us themed.
yeah. Yes.
Oh my God, that's
Upper alley.
that's made in a lab for you, Anney.
I know it is.
I've already seen TikTok videos that I've had to send her. She's like, oh my God. And every time her response is, I can't wait.
I might die of excitement. Oh my God.
How are you, Bridget?
Yes.
I'm doing well. Looking forward to Vegas. Also hoping I don't get sick. Yeah, I think I just need to stay in until my flight. Just don't leave my house.
Yeah.
And so just so that because now I'm very nervous, but
Sorry.
hopefully it'll be all good. And yeah, I'm excited to hear more about this Last of Us haunted house after you go. Give us a full report.
Oh,
Do you
I
like
will.
being scared, Bridget?
Oh, I love scary. Well, I like titillated. There can be a line where it's too scary. So it's a little bit of a finding the right balance vibe for me. I enjoy spooky things. I enjoy Halloween. I enjoy haunted houses. But if it's too scary, then I'm no longer enjoying it. So it has to be just the right mix.
So you don't mind being chased?
I don't mind being chased. I went to a haunted house last Halloween, and for some reason, the performers who chase you, there was a guy with a chainsaw who for some reason was like, I'm gonna chase her. And so he spent I spent the whole haunted house. I basically was worked out essentially. This guy was chasing me the whole time.
See, there's a key to get them to pick you. There's a couple of if you want them to pick you as the person. And I used to like play that up because I liked being scared so much.
What do you do if you want to be picked?
There are a couple things. One of the big ones is wear a color they can see pretty well in the dark. Another one is, I don't usually do this one, but if you're like really funny, being scared, if you're like really over the top being scared, they will target you.
This is why I don't go to them, because I know my face, my reaction will say everything, and then they'll pick on me and I'm gonna fight somebody.
Yeah. You know, that's fair.
I'm a fight or flight girl, and apparently I fight.
Hey, at least you know it.
I'm not fast enough.
It depends.
I'll trip somebody.
I have faith in you.
I'll maneuver my way. I'd say that this is my thing. Is like if I would have to do the like trip somebody, I'm sorry, I'd be the villain and set someone up so I can survive.
Like take her instead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's why. So, old host Caroline and I get along really well because we have our apocalypse plan. Is that she's just gonna give up? So that's my decoy to survive.
You're like,
You're using her giving up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a final girl no matter what. I'm making it to the end of this situation.
Right. I'm like, I will not be the minority that gets killed.
I like that you've got a plan.
Well, I have to make sure I'm with Caroline. I think that's the first plan.
Yes. Well,
anyway, happy Halloween.
We do have quite a horrifying thing to discuss today.
It's actually horror themed.
Is it horrifying or is it like Survivor exciting?
Well, yeah. But transition-wise, this is a very scary thing to talk about. You got to play along with my transitions.
I live for your masterful transitions. They're so good.
Thank you. I will lie awake at night and be like, how can I do this? Just so you know, there's a lot of work going on behind the curtains here.
She's been staring at this, waiting for it.
Yeah. Oh, all the time. But yes, can you tell us what we are talking about today, Bridget?
Yes. So folks probably by now have seen in the news that former President Trump and 18 of his associates are facing charges for violating Georgia's Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations, or RICO Act. Basically, when you are doing some like organized crime, like mob style activities, Georgia, as I'm sure y'all know, take that very seriously. And these are related to schemes to try to keep Trump in office after he lost the election. So a big piece of these charges stem from the way that Trump and his associate Rudy Giuliani basically claimed that two Black women poll workers, a mother-daughter duo, Freeman and Shay Moss, had tampered with votes. Now, that has been time and time again, like on the official record, these women have been cleared of wrongdoing, and that did not stop Trump and Giuliani from baselessly, repeatedly, and publicly putting them in danger by lying about them. And so I really see this story as like a culmination of so many of the things that I talk about on my own pod. You know, what happens when racism and sexism just run unchecked online and really creates the conditions for dangerous lies about Black women to find a welcome home where they can be amplified and legitimized. In this case, those lies threaten democracy for all of us. And so I think that there's so much really meaty reporting going on about what's happening with these charges related to Trump. But I think it's important that the story of these women does not go overlooked or does not go missed, because at its heart, it is about how these people used their positions and their power to baselessly smear like two people who hadn't done anything wrong. And so I just think their story and their testimony, it's just important to me to keep making sure that we really center that and that it doesn't get lost.
Right. Because as we've talked about before, as I am in Fulton County, that is where I vote. A lot of the times it's mostly Black women who are volunteering at these voting places and making it run so smoothly and doing all of these things. And to hear about this, and who are volunteering, who were wanting to help their community and did nothing wrong, but being used as scapegoats and that getting amplified in the online space and then being kind of chased away from it. Like, it's really upsetting because that is such an important job. It's so important to voting. And it's just because these guys are jerks and liars. And we're looking for people that they could blame, that people would get behind them blaming, is really upsetting.
Yeah, and you put that exactly right. I think that I'm really drawn to the humanity of Ruby and Shay, but it's really not just about them and their story, because these attacks on election workers, poll workers, who are like largely women, like that's, a thing, so it's definitely gendered. These attacks on them are also attacks on democracy, because if you saw the way that Ruby and Shay were treated and how other election workers were treated, threatened, harassed, lied about, targeted, why would you want to do that work? That work is not well paid. It's not work that is like put on a pedestal or like well protected or given a lot of respect. It used to be and it should be, but unfortunately it's not. And so if regular people who are interested in like just helping our civic process move forward and move smoothly, if those people are like, I don't want to do this work anymore, why would I want to do this? And the only people who are invested and interested in doing this work are extremists, it's not good for democracy. And so it's like, we'll talk about some of the findings from how this has impacted elections writ large. But yeah, if election centers have to close because no one wants to work them, that means that less people are going to be able to access those polling places. Polling places end up shutting down. The wheels of democracy are not able to move as smoothly as they should. And democracy is like a pretty tenuous thing. I think I never really thought about it before, how fragile it is, how you definitely need things to be moving smoothly. And it doesn't really take much to have the whole system come crashing down.
Right. To give some context about what Fulton County is, because we talk about Fulton County and not many of the people outside of Georgia know what that means. We have the funny song that talks about that's not Atlanta. Fulton County is Atlanta, which is heavily populated with a lot of Black votes, a largely amount of Black communities, one of the bluest areas, one of the reasons why we turned blue in the first place. And after all of the voting rights stuff that happened with our governor trying to take away so many things, including not allowing to give out water, not allowing people to sit, all of these things, it was pointedly for places like Fulton County, again, especially with all the gerrymandering and such. And it's quite funny that the people who are making such big threats and pointing at Fulton were not from Fulton. They're literally from outskirts where other places have been proven to have campaign election fraud, typically from, again, Republican side from the 2020 election that we saw. And it was very, very, very targeted for that very reason. They needed, as you said, to target Black women, because we know that for the past decades of election, it's been Black women who have turned the votes and really have made a difference in places like Georgia, which no one ever saw ever turning blue at any point in time. And so in that context, this is a fight. And it literally was a place to start a war when it came to elections.
I've always thought it has got to be so exhausting to live in Fulton County, because it's just like, you're just trying to like live your life and exist. And all these different institutional forces and like powerful figures are trying to stop you from doing that at every turn. And I just can't imagine what it's like to live someplace that is just like constantly the subject of conversation and scrutiny and trickery. It's just like, it's got to be exhausting.
Bridget, one of the first conversations you and I ever had when we met, what's it, in 2019? No, I guess it was way before then, 2017.
I think that's right.
I asked you if you would move to Atlanta, and you said, we already had our own stuff at Washington. I don't know if I can do it again in Atlanta. Knowing what you would have to get involved in. You called it really quickly, because when you were talking about Abrams, I think at the time, and you were like, I don't know if I can do that again.
Yeah, that was my whole thing. There was a time where I was like, I think I might have to move to Atlanta. And just the idea of like, and not that DC doesn't have its problems, but I was just like, I don't think I have the energy for that.
Like, I would have to start again. I don't know if I can. And rightly so. It is exhausting. And again, because the crux of the work has been done by the Black community, Black women. The organization Fair Fight was created by Stacey Abrams after her first election, and we know so many things had happened at that point, and I'm still very bitter about that point, and really caused so much that we did become a focal point. Georgia, specifically Fulton County, became a focal point to this point that Shay and Ruby got targeted because they needed to find two people that they can make as suspicious as possible that is on the side that has been making this huge turnaround.
So I'm so glad that you put it that way. And this is something that I think has kind of, I won't say gotten missed, but I would say has just sort of been implied. And I think that we should just like say it as is. I believe that the reason why the attacks on Ruby and Shay were so effective and like took hold is because they are Black women. I think that you're exactly right. They needed somebody to pin the Georgia loss on. And I think that it's not a surprise that the people they went after were these two Black women. And I think that the way that race and gender and class intersected to make them these like effective targets for this kind of smear campaign, I don't think that we have like fully unpacked what that means and why it was effective. Even in reporting that I think is really good, like reporting that I respect, I just think it relies on us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our society. And I don't think that we have like fully contended with what happened to Ruby and Shay, why it was effective, and how it was allowed to be amplified by people like social media platforms and media outlets and all of that. So yeah, I just think like it's something we really got to talk about and something that I think that we really got to take a lot of important lessons and truths from. So if folks don't know, Ruby and Shay were election workers in Fulton County, Georgia, a state that Trump lost in 2020. Get ready for me to say that over and over again because it is a fact. So you might recall, I'm sure that y'all recall that in Georgia, Trump pressured the Secretary of State to like find votes for him to rewrite history. Shay had actually been an election worker in Georgia for a long time. Listening to her talk about it, she describes it as something that she had really done in an effort to support her community and just like something that she felt like was her civic duty. You know, she has talked about how like her community has a lot of older Black folks in it, like elders, and that she saw doing this work as an election worker as part of service to like the elders in her community. So it was really just like wanted to do her civic good. During 2020, Fulton County was meant to have a shortage in election workers because of COVID. So Shay recruited her then 62-year-old mom, Ruby, a retired 911 operator, to also serve as an election worker. So this is something that I think is very sad. Like in their testimony, Shay has talked about how she feels quite a bit of guilt for recruiting her mother into this work. Of course, not knowing, how could she know that Trump and Giuliani would attack them in this way? But she has described feeling quite a bit of guilt at getting her mom involved in this, which just really breaks my heart.
Yeah, that's when, and I know we're going to talk about this, but when like the whole family gets drawn into this thing that you think you're doing, they were doing this like civic duty, feeling really like this is what I want to do for my community. And that is democracy at work. That is like, oh, I want to make this happen. And it's really important to me. And to have that, to feel guilty about that because there are these other undemocratic, like fascist forces who threaten and who make you feel unsafe and make your loved ones feel unsafe. Like, it is heartbreaking. It's disgusting that this is what happens.
It really is. And so basically, on December 3rd, 2020, a lawyer working for the Trump campaign obtained security video of election night from State Farm Arena in Georgia. So the video just shows like election workers in general, including Ruby and Shay, just like doing their jobs, right? Like nothing untoward is going on. The lawyer brought the video to the Georgia State Senate committee saying that he thought it showed someone who had the name Ruby across her shirt somewhere finding a suitcase of ballots from underneath the table. Now, all of this is just a complete lie. The video just shows them working normally. The election workers were told to like pack it up for the night. So they put the ballots away. They didn't put them in suitcases. They put them in like the normal ballots where ballots are always kept. And later in the night, they were told to go ahead and restart the count. don't wait till the morning. And so that's what they did. The video is just like normal election worker business. But I think the presence of like just these two Black women was enough for this person to be like, something's going on here. I need to flag this. So the video starts making its way online through this cottage industry of like extremist blogs and media sites. Once it's in that online pipeline, it's basically everywhere. Like, it doesn't matter. By the time that it starts making the rounds, it has already been thoroughly debunked by Georgia's Secretary of State. None of that matters. It's already like in this pipeline, and it's going to be amplified despite the fact that it's already been like proven a lie. So this is where we meet a big vector of lies and like dissemination of these lies about Ruby and Shay. The Gateway Pundit, which is an extremist right-wing media site. Research from the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public found that the Gateway Pundit was the second most prolific purveyor of election misinformation on Twitter during 2020. So they are like a big source of incorrect, inaccurate information about our elections. And once they get that video, they publish an article under the headline, huge, all caps, video footage from Georgia shows suitcases filled with ballots pulled from under table after, all caps, supervisor told GOP poll workers to leave tabulation center. So again, that's just like a completely misleading claim. But the way that they framed it is like, we found this bombshell video evidence of the smoking gun of votes being tampered with and the election being stolen from Donald Trump.
Which is hilarious because Fulton County was never Donald Trump. Like, it's never been red. Like, everybody else who lives in Georgia are like, what? No, wait. And it reminds me, honestly, I watched it for like a few seasons, but a setup of a Scandal episode.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, the grainy security video where they just like redline some things and you're like, oh my God, there it is. And they're like, no, wait, they're just boxes. What's happening?
The proof.
And it's so funny. There's a thing that happens online where anything can look nefarious if it's like grainy video and you like write in all caps on it. Like it's just like a video of people like moving around in an empty office building. And it's like, they're like all caps, like busted. Like anything looks nefarious when you frame it that way.
And then you're like, wait for it. And you're like, wait for what?
Wait for what?
Wait for what? What are we looking at?
See, my like association with this is ghost videos, which I don't believe in ghosts, but I watch ghost videos. And they'll be like, there it is. And I'm like, where? And they'll circle something. And I'm like, still don't see it.
I blame it on my eyesight. I'm like, it must be there. They circled something.
I really don't see anything there.
But yeah, it's really interesting because obviously all they needed, they knew, this is why I say this is a Scandal video. They're like, if we can just pull this video of these grainy subjects with boxes and then circle the boxes, people will believe this. And it worked. It
worked.
Literally began the, like, I'm like, wow, this is a bad, like, Shonda Rhimes episode. What is happening?
It truly is. And so the Gateway Pundit continued taking their notes from a bad episode of Scandal. They called Ruby out by name. Ruby is somebody who really likes to wear, like talks about how she was very proud of her name before all of this happened. And so she likes to wear personalized shirts and hats and things that have her name on it. So the Gateway Pundit called her out by name, writing on the site, her name is Ruby Freeman, and she made the mistake of advertising her purse on her desk the same night she was involved in voter fraud on a massive scale, all caps. Her t-shirt says Lady Ruby and her purse says La Ruby, which is her company. This is not a smart move. Her company is called La Ruby's Unique Treasures. It's on her LinkedIn page. Maybe the Georgia police or Bill Barr's DOJ may want to pay Ruby Freeman a visit. The article concludes with images of Ruby over the banner that says, "Crook Gets Caught." They play this video on OANN, which is a kind of, I guess you could call it like a far-right news network. And that is really when it like really blows up. So once the video gets onto OWN, that is when Trump starts amplifying it on his own Twitter. That is when Fox News starts talking about it. And that is when the campaign of harassment really gets scary for these women. Just 3 days later, after Trump starts amplifying it on Twitter, Ruby calls 911 to report people showing up at her home, which is terrifying. And I think it's really important to point out the ways that racism and misogyny worked to fuel these lies. I just do not believe that had Ruby and her daughter not been Black women, and that if we did not have a digital media climate that is like ready and poised and willing to validate and amplify the worst racist lies about Black women who we know were disproportionately harmed by conspiracy theories and disinformation and harassment, I don't think it would have taken off like it did.
This kind of reminded me of when we did our episode on Meghan Markle. There was all of this outrage about like, look, she's making all this money from podcasting, which is just complete nonsense. But I feel like that, going back to that quote of like, oh, she's advertising her company. Look how crass. Like, I felt like there was a through line of, you know, for Black women so ready to be like, that's disgusting. Like, how dare you?
Right.
Yes.
Like for things that are totally commonplace, but it's like
Right.
when it's a Black woman doing it and it's said in this like manner that is clearly meant to convey like judgment, I think people are just willing, like the Meghan Markle stuff, like I remember reading like, oh, she ate avocado toast. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not really about the substance of what she's done or her behavior or what she said or anything of substance. It's just like pulling from this societal distrust of her identity. And that's what I think like really helped these attacks on Shay and Ruby take hold. I do not think that had they been white women or men, that these attacks would have been as amplified and have taken off the way that they did. I just and part of the evidence is the way that the people who were harassing them and attacking them were doing it in a way that is so clearly racialized. Like Rudy Giuliani, in a phone call, he looked at the tape and he said, these women are quite obviously surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's a criminal investigator or prosecutor that they're engaged in surreptitious illegal activity again that day. They're walking around Georgia lying. They should have been questioned already. Their places of work, their homes should have been searched for evidence of ballots, evidence of USB ports, evidence of voter fraud. So he's accusing these women of passing USB ports back and forth as if they're vials of cocaine or heroin, which like, tell me that is not meant to be a racist dog whistle. But in reality, these women were just giving each other a piece of candy. They were like, oh, I had a piece of candy in my hand and I was passing it to my mom. And that's what that like, from that totally innocuous movement, Giuliani said that they were passing USB ports as if they were vials of heroin or cocaine. Like truly, truly beyond the pale of just delusional lies.
I love that the melting man is the one accused. There's so many things that I'm like, is this for real? I don't know what's happening. And, you know, I have to say in this whole thing that when I remember what was happening, at this point, I don't think I remembered their names. I just remember people being accused, and it was specifically 2 Black women, that though eventually the Secretary of State, who got a lot of praise, and he shouldn't have, as well as our governor, eventually started defending them, but not until after they were doxxed. Mm-hmm. It was an interesting setup of like, they allowed this to happen to see, again, at the very least, they stood up enough to be like, yes, our votes are fine. There's nothing incredulous about this. There's nothing incriminating in here after the fact. But during this time, they didn't do shit. Like, I remember, like, they're just saying they're investigating. That was they kept everything kind of to the side, not agreeing, not saying anything, and until they started getting harassed, like their life was being threatened, and then they're like, okay, well, now we need to put a stop to this. But they allowed this to escalate to that point. Again, because they did not care about protecting them either. Like, for what they did later, sure, but I feel like there should have been charges for their negligence, but hey.
Yeah. I mean, by then, they had thoroughly internally debunked this video, and they quietly released like statements eventually, but we know that they knew the entire time that Shay and Ruby had done nothing wrong and that had been investigated. And so I'm with you. In my book, this is just my opinion, you don't get a ton of credit for quietly eventually being like, actually, they didn't do anything wrong, and we've already debunked this video, when they were being like physically threatened by armed psychopaths.
Right. And I think it's obvious that they could see the evidence about how racist this was, how sexist and racist, like how this all came from misogynoir. But they just couldn't say that because then they would have to say that their party is exactly what we see them as. And so therefore they were just quietly defending them, not truly helping. It's obvious also that they allowed those perpetrators, and I'm going to call them perpetrators at this point, Giuliani and Trump, to continue this tirade even after the fact. Like, they did not do anything to stop them from harassing.
Yeah. In that, the infamous call that Trump made to Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, asking him to find votes, Donald Trump calls Ruby out by name in that call. He says, "We had at least 18,000. That's on tape. We had them counted very painstakingly. 18,000 voters having to do with Ruby Freeman. She's a vote scammer, a professional vote scammer and hustler." Yeah, so like he was the head of that party, was calling Ruby by her first and last name and lying about her and blaming her for his election loss. It's terrifying. And again, I also think, like, to your point, Samantha, it's complicated to talk about, but I think that one of the reasons why this lie took off the way it did is because of the visual of Ruby and Shay, right? Like, sites like Gateway Pundit are really good at knowing what is going to resonate with their audience, what is going to stoke something inside them that is going to motivate them to click and share and have an emotional response. And it's if you go back and look at what the Gateway Pundit was publishing about Ruby and Shay, it is highly visual. They posted so many images of these women online. On election night, Ruby and Shay were wearing like blonde extensions that contrast with their darker complexions. Literally, it's like how my hair is styled right now. I'm wearing blonde extensions. And Ruby owns a fashion shop. And so her personal style is like a big part of how she shows up to the world. She likes bedazzled shirts. She likes to have her name on her shirt or her hat. These are people who have a very distinctive look. And I believe the reason why the Gateway Pundit posted so many images of the women were basically to be like, look how Black these women are. Look how they look. Because they knew that these images, these visuals of these Black women, they could say anything they wanted because they were weaponizing this already pre-existing disdain for Black women. And so I think that like they knew what they were doing. That is why you see these images used over and over and over again of them like with like crook stamped across their head. I think they knew that was going to be what like moved their audience. And I think they weaponized that to make this lie stickier.
Yeah, it follows along with what Trump has been saying about Atlanta, especially when he was going after John Lewis before his death.
He always does this like, oh, if I were in Atlanta, I would be more worried about the crime. Like, just like...
Yeah. He would go after it and trying to set it up as if it was just this horrible, stricken place because it was made up of largely Black communities, which is like, no, that's why it's so productive and wealthy right now. Like, I'm not really sure what you're trying to point at because Atlanta is one of the more successful areas of Georgia. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
And he had been setting that up, and that played right into this whole scandal. Because again, here's a woman who has her own business, and she's doing fine, and it's so well enough that she helps volunteer.
Yeah, and I think like him and his cronies knew that like just evoking the idea that Black women were involved in the vote counting process in Georgia would be enough proof, I'm putting that in quotes, not like actual proof, but like their proof that something nefarious was going on. They basically told their supporters like, Black women were involved in this voting process, so that should be evidence enough that Atlanta or Georgia is like rigged against me. I think that was really the argument that they were trying to imply.
Right. And again, it just aims it towards his already base, who is very loud.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think that these attacks really weaponize and rely on tropes about Black women being inherently untrustworthy, which we see time and time again with things like online harassment and disinformation. So this all led to like a flood of really scary, racist death threats and harassment against Ruby and Shay online. And folks watched the January 6th commission. Their testimony really just like, I think every American should watch it because it really is horrifying and also heartbreaking to hear them describe what they went through. But this is Shay talking about what it felt like to know that her mom was now involved in this. Shay, during the January 6th testimony, said, "I felt horrible. I felt like it was all my fault. Like if I never would have decided to be an election worker, I could have done anything else, but that's what I decided to do. And now people are lying and spreading rumors and lies and attacking my mom. I'm her only child. Going to my grandmother's house, I'm her only grandchild. And my kid is I just feel so bad. I felt bad for my mom, and I felt horrible for picking this job and for being the one that always wants to help, always there, never missing that one election. I just felt like it was my fault for putting my family in this situation." It is really heartbreaking. Ruby talks about how she had been so proud of her nickname and her name, Lady Ruby. That's the name of her business. That she is definitely a staple in Georgia. Everybody knew Ruby as Lady Ruby, and she always wore that shirt with her name on it. And because of all of this campaign of lies and harassment, Ruby talks about how she once was this like pillar of the community and now is afraid to use her own name, her name that she used to wear as a badge of honor. Like I get emotional just thinking about what that would have been like for these women and how threatening it sounds like that was to their own sense of identity, their own sense of safety, their own sense of being able to show up in their communities that was like really important to them. That was just taken away because these people lied. Like, it just really upsets me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to keep in mind, too, is that these were two women who were just trying to help their community. They were not looking for this, obviously, but weren't looking for like fame or attention, or they were just trying to help their community. And then it got blown up and it became this whole thing where now, yeah, you can't use the name you were so proud of, or you feel guilty about doing something good for your community. But there was like a whole organized effort that ended up getting targeted towards them.
Exactly. And so let's talk a bit about who were some of the players in that effort. So in addition to the like mixed bag of Trump cronies that you've heard about, you know, Rudy Giuliani, folks like that, Ruby and Shay were also being harassed and threatened by a woman named Trevian Kuti. Trevian was formerly a publicist for the R&B singer / convicted sex criminal R. Kelly. So she definitely like knows how to pick the men to associate with. She had some kind of association with Kanye West at some point, who you may recall ran for president himself alongside Trump in 2020 before becoming a vocal Trump supporter. NBC News, it's not totally clear what her association with Donald Trump is. NBC News reported that in a biography of her on a website for the Women's Global Initiative, a business networking group, she identified herself as a member of the Young Black Leadership Council under President Donald Trump. She says that she was secured as Kanye West's publicist in 2018 and now serves as his director of operations. But importantly, Kanye West's camp says that she was not associated with Kanye West. But Kanye's camp is like, we don't know her. They're like, she is not associated with us. So like, don't know what to tell you. So in any event, regardless of like whether or not she is truly associated with Kanye West or Donald Trump, what went down is this. Trevian showed up at Shay and Ruby's door, and the women, after being like harassed and targeted, understandably just like called the police. The police show up, and they all end up going to a police station together to talk. Trevian told them that she was visiting them at the direction of a high-profile individual who warned that if Ruby and Shay did not confess to voter fraud, they would be arrested in 48 hours. According to Rolling Stone, the body cam footage of the conversation shows Trevian telling the women, "I cannot say what specifically will take place. I just know that it will disrupt your freedom and the freedom of one or more of your family members. You are a loose end for a party that needs to tidy up." Which is like a real weird thing to tell somebody, to be honest with you. That's like a very weird thing to say.
That's a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say, Trevian has said like, oh, they're getting it wrong. I was trying to help these women. That's not a threat. That's her defense, is that like she was genuinely trying to offer support to these women. That's what she says. You tell me what you think, but like that's her defense. Then she calls a man by the name of Harrison Floyd of Black Voices for Trump, puts him on speakerphone, and Floyd says that he can offer the women protection. But according to that body cam audio, he said that Ruby and Shay would have to confess to voter fraud. If she did, he would offer her legal protection. But if she declined, then her and her family would be arrested. So Floyd worked for the Trump campaign, formerly as the executive director of Black Voices for Trump. But he told Rachel Maddow that he sent Trevion to the women's house as a private citizen, not as an employee of the Trump campaign. He also, in those calls, said that like he has people that can like keep her safe if she confessed, all of that. I should say, like, I'm including what these people are saying as their defense or like how they explain their behavior. I don't really believe any of these people, but like this is what they said about like why they did the things that they did. So I just think people should know their side of the story, even though I don't believe any of it.
This is like, this is such a bad setup of so many like gang movies that you're like, what is happening? Like, this reminds me of what would have happened in Chicago in the early mob days. Like, they create a problem and a threat, but we'll protect you if you confess these things.
Right.
And you're thinking also, at what point does Floyd and Kudi not realize they're about to be thrown under the bus? Like, they are the scapegoats now.
Yeah. I mean, so yes, and Floyd especially, because folks might remember that when all the other defendants in the Trump-RICO case got arrested in Georgia, most of them just like bonded out right away.
Right.
But Floyd, because when the FBI initially had like served him at his apartment, he got into some kind of like physical scuffle with the FBI. And so that led to like a warrant for his arrest. And so when he turned himself in for these Trump-RICO charges, he actually was not able to bond out. Like everybody else was like in and out.
Yeah, it was bad. I didn't realize it was for that. And BT Dubs, the RICO charges here in Georgia is partially racial. So it's quite funny to me that they got that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's complicated, but like, I just can't believe they thought this was a good idea. I can't believe that they were like, yes, I will get myself arrested for this man. I will get like pretty serious charges for this man. I will break the law for this man. And that will be fine for me. That will go well for me. I will be in their club. I will be taken care of. I will be protected. I cannot believe that somebody would think that. So yeah, just really says a lot about the judgment there, I guess.
Right. Again, I'm like, there's nothing about this group of people who would help you, as we see.
Yeah, they have a long history of throwing people under the bus.
Giuliani's going completely broke.
Right. You think they're not going to throw you under the bus? Yes.
You're not special.
I will say one side note is that Trevion Kuti, I think that she's very active on Instagram. I think that if folks listening are curious for more information about her, I really implore them to look at her Instagram. Her Instagram, I think, is very telling about what kind of person she is.
Right.
So yeah, folks are interested in like, because like when I first was reading about this, I was like, what kind of person? Like, she sounds like a interesting person. Let me look her up. And her Instagram really confirmed that. She's someone who is like hashtag overload. Like every post is like, so like, I just think I can't really even describe it. I think if folks are curious, they should look her up on Instagram. And I don't think you will be disappointed at what you see. I'll put it that way.
Well, her association with R. Kelly, because if I know one thing in Atlanta, Black women, they do not side with R. Kelly. Like, that's so rare.
I was once at an event in Atlanta when they played Remix to Ignition, and Black women were like, boo, turn this off.
Yeah.
Like, until the DJ turned it off.
Like, yeah, every debate that I've ever seen, and like it would be on our neighbor pages, all of that, it was always men or white people and white people were smart enough to stay out of it for the most part.
I'm going to stay out of this one.
Yeah, they were like, okay, we're not part of this. But every Black woman that you saw was going after anyone. So for her to be a supporter at any point, you're like,
really
that
tells you a lot.
That's not a, that's the sign right there.
Mm-hmm.
this whole conversation between Trevion and Harrison Floyd and Ruby and Shay went down on January 4th, 2021, just 2 days before January 6th. It honestly sounds like Trump's associates just wanted to get a forced confession out of these women as a means to stop the transition of power. So on January 6th, when pro-Trump extremists and goons were storming the Capitol, they were also surrounding the women's home with bullhorns. But luckily, they had already fled for their safety. But this is where it gets even scarier. Trump supporters actually tried to force their way into Shay's elderly grandmother's home to make a citizen's arrest. I honestly cannot even fathom how terrifying it would be to have a mob of angry, potentially armed people show up at your elderly grandmother's home and with the intent to force their way in and citizens arrest her. Like, I don't even have words. Like, I don't even know. I can't think of anything more horrifying than that.
Right. Once again, she had nothing to do with any of the election. So This is just a hostage at this point.
Essentially, yes. And like, and I think it goes back to a lot of the things that we talk about on the show when we deal with things like harassment campaigns. It is rarely just the woman. So it's usually a woman at the center of a harassment campaign like this. It is rarely just that one woman. It is her and her family, her and her parents, her and her kids, her and her partner. And it's an effort to, I think, terrify women and other marginalized people from participating in civic and public life. If like I'm one person, if I'm going to face these kinds of attacks, I wouldn't love it, but like, okay, that's me, fine. If it's me and my elderly parents, me and my child, me and my partner, me and my community, you might think twice about your behavior if you felt like you were putting the people that you loved at risk. And so this is a specific tactic in order to frighten women out of civic and public life. And I think it's effective. It's upsetting that it works, but I can understand why women don't want to put their families at risk in this way.
Mm-hmm. After that election, I volunteered at a few polls, and I even thought about trying to work at the elections, and they were in desperate need. They were begging people to come. And this was after several of the voter sites had been shut down by our governor. So they'd already been transitioned into like maybe 4 stations out of those 6. And they were trying desperately to find people because they were having such a struggle.
Yeah.
So that's not surprising to me. It's actually become a common problem. According to research from the Brennan Center, nearly 1 in 3 local election officials know at least one election worker who has left the job, partly due to safety concerns, increased threats, and intimidation. Ruby herself said that she could never see herself working another election again for the rest of her life, which, again, I don't blame her. In this most recent election, we had a shortage of poll workers, which, of course, leads to anti-democratic outcomes like short-staffing polling precincts, like you just described, Sam, that force people to wait in longer lines to vote. These shortages of poll workers can also cause some locations to either close or be consolidated with other polling centers, making it more challenging for voters to access new polling places. All of this can lead to disenfranchisement and reduced trust in elections, especially among communities of color and other marginalized communities who already face barriers to voting. And so it is a widespread issue. When you go to vote, if people have been intimidated out of being part of that process, that is an attack on our democracy, and it harms all of us, not just the women who are attacked and find themselves the targets.
Right. And that's terrifying. I remember voting kind of soon after this for a local election, and you could almost feel it. You could feel that everyone was more unsure about the process, and everyone was more on edge. And at one point, like, the power flickered, and you could just see people looking around like, oh, like, I can't trust this anymore. And the damage that has been done to these specific women does speak to so much more. It speaks to this doubt and people not feeling safe to work at polls. And I think who works at polls, like, if I go in and it's like a bunch of kind of burly white dudes that I might think are Trump supporters, I'm not going to feel as good about voting. Like, I'm not going to feel as safe about voting. And it's just like a trickle. It's everywhere. It's got a ripple effect. We're talking about kind of a specific thing, but it's such a larger issue.
Absolutely. And it's absolutely gendered. 80% of election officials are women. So these are women being attacked, and it's harming all of us. And it shouldn't be like that. When you go to vote, when the lights flicker, you shouldn't have to worry like, oh no, what's about to happen? Like, this is the foundation and the cornerstone of our democracy. And it shouldn't be like that, right? So we deserve better than a system that is able to weaponize racism and sexism and lies to disenfranchise us. We deserve so much better. And, that kind of brings us to today. So Rudy and Shay sued the right-wing website, The Gateway Pundit, and its owners for defamation for publishing stories that instigated a deluge of intimidation, harassment, and threats. And they also settled a suit with One American News Network. And honestly, I hope they get every penny. I hope they get so much money and then some. Earlier this month, a federal judge ruled that Rudy Giuliani is liable for defaming these women. He'll have to pay their legal fees. He's already paid about $90,000. And there's going to be another trial to determine how much he will have to pay in additional damages. It could be in the millions. And so I'm pleased that these women are getting some semblance of justice. Like, I think that's great. But I do also think that no amount of money can make right what they went through. They only wanted to serve their communities and do civic good during a pandemic, and the president and his associates put their lives at risk because of that. They testified and spoke up about what they experienced, and putting themselves even more at risk. And so what they did was heroic. They are absolutely American heroes, but Black women should not have to be put in such a great danger for a country that is going to weaponize their own identities against them, right? And so, yeah, I think that what they did is really heroic, but I wish they never had to do that in the first place. I wish that they were able to just do their jobs and live their lives and try to support democracy as they were doing without facing these kind of attacks, because not only does it hurt them, it hurts us all.
Yeah, I hope they get all the money as they deserve. I'm glad that Giuliani actually admitted that he was wrong. We shouldn't even have to get to that point.
Technically, what he admitted was, I am so broke that I can no longer afford to contest these allegations. So he didn't admit wrongdoing, but he was like, I don't have the money to continue to contest these. So
okay.
Sure.
I read that wrong, but we'll leave it at that. I'm glad he's getting all his money taken away.
Yes.
That's delightful. And we know he's never getting any money that he was supposed to get from Trump. So that's even better.
No, he's like begging Trump to pay his legal fees. Also, even if Trump was like, I'll pay your legal fees, he doesn't pay anyway. So like, what does that even look like? Like, he doesn't pay his bill.
I think he actually owes Giuliani for the years of representing him that like he just doesn't pay, which everybody's like, that's not a thing, which I still love to think about the fact people love him as a businessman. Trump and Roll, I'm like, all his businesses go bankrupt. I don't understand what you're talking about. Literally in Atlanta, he tried to build a whole apartment and it went bankrupt.
It's easy to be a savvy businessman when you just don't pay anybody that you owe money to. Like, if I didn't pay any of my bills, I'd probably be rich.
I love the whole file bankruptcy thing, which he's done so many times, and he can because he doesn't need credit. So he's like, I'll just keep borrowing money. Yeah, and I hate that this is their legacy. Like, that's the thing that I know they did what they had to do because they're going to protect themselves and protect their loved ones. But the fact that they had to be put to this point, going through so much stress and then just hiding. Because I remember when they did hide, they left Atlanta and went to South Georgia. And even there, they're just like, what if they find us?
Yeah, it breaks my heart. My heart goes out to these women. I think about them often. I think about them a lot. I wish them nothing but peace and prosperity and abundance for the rest of their lives, because Lord knows they deserve it.
They deserve it. And they've done so much, especially for the state of Georgia, with what we're seeing. And we love to see the fact that, thanks in part to them, to coming out and speaking out, we get to see mugshots.
Oh, if you haven't seen Trayvion's mugshot, I definitely suggest taking a look at that too. That's one. I'll end there. Just a lot going on.
I love it. And we should also note that it is DA Fani Willis, who is a Black woman, who really decided, like, yeah, we're not going to let this sit.
No, I don't think I knew like much about her until this started. So like, yeah, I know it chaps Trump's ass that so many of the people who are like trying to hold him accountable are Black women. I know that's got to chafe his ass.
And he really hoped that Georgia would pull a Florida where Kemp would kick the DA off.
Mm-hmm.
But Kemp was like, nah, I'm not messing with her.
Like, let me
I'm not
get
messing
involved
with
with
Atlanta. If I mess with Atlanta, it might be over for me. And he realizes that.
Don't mess with Atlanta because the South's got something to say.
Look, they know that he barely made it by some, I'm going to say, gray areas past Abrams. But like, Fulton County will be the one that takes him out if he's not careful. And
Here.
DA Willis, she doesn't play.
Oh, we always love having you so much, Bridget. I feel like we could just go on and on and on and talk about all these different things.
This is such a pleasure. You always let me, like, when I've got a bee in my bonnet about something, you all always give me a platform, so I appreciate it.
We love bees and bonnets. Bridget's Bees and Bonnets, the new name.
Oh, that's a good business
That
name.
alliteration.
Look at that.
I had to save that one.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for always being a delight and doing this research and making sure people know these important things. We know you're very busy, so we really appreciate it.
Yes.
Where can the good listeners find you?
Well, you can check out my podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet. You can find me on Instagram at Bridget Marie in DC or on Twitter at Bridget Marie. And you can see me and Anney in Las Vegas if you're there. Come check us out.
Yes. I will wear not pajamas for...
Are you going to low-key cosplay Scully?
Oh,
You need to do Scully.
Oh.
Hello.
You should. You absolutely should.
I actually have a friend who cosplays as Scully and she has the badge. Maybe she'll let me. Okay, that's a good idea. Okay. Well, that's a spoiler for what we might be talking about. But yes.
My bad.
Thank you, Bridget. If you would like to find us, you can. You can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I Never Told You. We have a TeePublic store. We also have a book. You can get it at stuffyoushouldreadbooks.com or wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Oh, no. And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite shows.